Okay, hello one more time from Susan. It's 11 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got great participation, 32, up to 32 for this particular session. So without further ado, I will just turn it over to our presenters. And I will monitoring chat, so feel free to type your questions, comments. In the event we have anyone on the phone instead of Zoom, we'll read them out loud and share the answers. Thanks so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Isaí Robledo. I'm the Director of Educational Partnerships and Initiatives at Randolph Community College. I will be serving as the moderator for this session. I welcome you to our session titled Establishing and Marketing Financial Resources to Fund Latinx and Hispanic Students' Education. As you could tell from the agenda that was sent out, we have representatives from various aspects of our community colleges and from various institutions. And so rather than speaking for them, I'll allow them to introduce themselves.
My name is Heidi White, and I'm the Director of International Student Services and Study Abroad at Durham Tech.
Hi, good morning. My name is Lisa Miller, and apologies for, I know it says on my Zoom name that it's Iva White. That is my 6-year-old daughter who shares my Zoom account so she can access her hybrid kindergarten class. But I work at Western Piedmont Community College and actually at Catawba Valley Community College as well as a split position. My focus is on grants, but I also have a private fundraising background as well.
And my name is Maria Lander. I'm with South Piedmont Community College. I am the Dean of Applied Science and Technology. And although I do not have responsibility for fundraising in the Latino community or recruitment, I've been very involved with nonprofit organizations that gear to the community colleges in our community.
Great, thank you all. As Susan mentioned, she and I will be monitoring the chat. And so our presenters will not be looking at the questions within the chat. We kind of set that up so that way we wouldn't disrupt the flow of the conversation. So they'll be taking cues from each other and from me. And so if you would, again, just make sure that you stay muted, type your questions in the chat. And if you do want to be anonymous, you do have the option within the chat feature where it says to. You can send a message to Susan or to me, and we will anonymously read off those questions for you. And so to get us started, we have just a few questions, predetermined questions. And so we do welcome your feedback, your input. And so I would ask Lisa, if you would, can you tell us a little bit about how your campus has been, or campuses have been establishing relationships within your local businesses, within your respective college foundations, as you work with donors, and how do you all bring this all together to financially support Hispanic and Latino students?
Thank you, Isa. And so I'm going to say that I think we are breaking ground here, and I'm certainly not a subject matter expert, but I'm going to talk about some of the things that I've actually some that I was learning that both Western Piedmont and CVCC are doing, but then also to say that when I was approached for this panel, it was specifically that maybe we haven't had this wider conversation about the power of fundraising and how that can support the Latinx students. So, I'll start by saying, and I'm sure that your foundations are doing this anyway, because they're fundraising for scholarships, but I mean, that would be the first point of entry. And so at Western Piedmont, while students that are paying out-of-state tuition rates may not be able to access financially based scholarships because they're not filling out the FAFSA, they can qualify for merit-based scholarships. So, right at the beginning of having conversations with donors where if they're interested in setting up a scholarship is just making it so that it doesn't have a tremendous amount of parameters around it. I think anybody who is in fundraising is going to see that that's always an ongoing conversation. But I think that's the best point of entry there. I know with Western Piedmont Community College, well, actually both. I think the other big piece of this is that you're not an island, that you're going out into the community and you're working with all these other entities to figure out how to address these issues. So at Western Piedmont Community College, a lot of our great student services staff have been working with an organization called Work and Burke, which was created basically out of one of our economic development organizations, specifically to figure out how can we keep this population of young people from leaving Burke County, seeing this talent drain happen. And I know we're talking about this across all 58 colleges, certainly the rural ones. And so one of the initiatives that have come out of Work and Burke is an event called Scholarship Night. And we've had a great relationship, not just with Work and Burke, but also with the Community Foundation of North Carolina. And we recently had our last scholarship event. And so they had a breakout session with it for students and their families in English, and then one for students and their families in Spanish. They did that last year as well, just to create a safe space for honest conversations to happen about how to access funding to be able to pay for your education. And then I just learned that some of my colleagues at Western Piedmont are continuing this with Work and Burke, and they have created an initiative called the Burke Coalition for Hispanic Student Support, whose mission is to raise awareness and provide resources to promote educational advancement among the Hispanic community in Burke County and surrounding areas. So, again, we're at the beginning of this, and it's my colleagues who are on the forefront of it, but they're recognizing that these barriers exist, as we all have. That's why we're here. And they recognize that we're going to have to come together as a community to address this. In addition, at Catawba Valley Community College, they have an Office of Multicultural Affairs that has existed for several years. And so on their staff, they have representatives of the Latinx community, the African American community, and the Asian community, which are three of the most prevalent demographic populations other than white students at CVCC. And so a big piece of their work is fundraising from business and community partnerships. And then what they're doing with those funds is they're taking them and they're using them to cover tuition and fees, Con Ed classes, and school supplies for minority students. And I think they're in the beginning phases as well of working with industries regarding sponsorship. So that's a work in progress. As I was thinking about this, I did reach out to the local community foundation in Burke County. So if you've got people who are working in fundraising on this and you haven't been in touch with your local community foundation, I would definitely reach out to them. I think that's going to be a prime place to be able to talk and have partnerships together, because they're also doing fundraising for scholarships. And the conversation that I had with her was what I was seeing within the both foundations of Western Piedmont and CVCC, is that you have these conversations with donors about the fact that their funding can be profoundly important to a student who has a strong work ethic, and really kind of tap into how that interest can align. And they can do it in a merit-based way. There are a variety of options. I haven't yet seen a lot of foundations or grants that would maybe come out of this, but in talking to the executive director of the Community Foundation of Burke County, she and I both agree that I think we're on the cusp of that I think we can see on the national stage and probably at our local levels that there are there's more action and conversation around racial and social equity, and that a lot of foundations are bending their lens to talk about that. I know just last week I was on 2 Zoom calls with different funders who are introducing their new strategic plan, and racial equity is a part of that. And actually what this conference has spurred me to do is that I'm going to reach back out to them and ask them, what are they doing for this population of students, and have they thought about that? So I think another piece of this is just having those conversations and figuring out that there are multiple pots to be able to access funding to serve these students, but that we're going to be plowing new ground here. And I also just wanted to observe, I wasn't able to make all of the welcome this morning, but I did hear some of Carol's presentation from EdNC, and I thought her conversations about storytelling, they completely parlayed in what I'm hearing from other my colleagues who are on the front lines of this, that really the best way to be able to communicate to donors or to grant makers is to be able to have that story. And the story of these students, these incredibly hardworking students, is very powerful. So I need to go back to my organizations and have more conversations of how can we get these stories promoted and elevated.
I also would like to add to storytelling, even though we have some local businesses that sponsor our Latino students, sometimes those relationships become sponsors because we're having these conversations with students. And I will just give an example. I was meeting with a high school student that getting some advising on CCP courses that he wanted to take. And he came with his uncle. And his uncle just shared that his dream was to get a degree in digital media, but he couldn't afford it, that he was a DACA recipient and he could not pay the out-of-state tuition. So in our conversation, I learned that he was working for a family-owned golf course for over 10 years. So I share with him that maybe the company may want to sponsor him to get the degree. So I gave him the form and encouraged him to reach out to his company. And really, the owner valued him a lot, and he was delighted. They were delighted to sponsor him. And now he's in the second year. He's a second-year student right now, very successful. And his first project was a video for the golf course. So it was a win-win situation for both.
That's great. I think that aligns with what we heard about the power of stories. So thank you, Maria. And so the next question that we had for you panelists was, can you tell us a little bit about some of the financial projects, initiatives that your campus or your community has taken to help fund the education, the tuition for non-North Carolina residents or non-US citizens? And Heidi, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'm going to share a few things that we have done at Durham Tech. Some of these things might sound familiar to you. You might have similar programs at your college. Some of them might be new ideas. And we also welcome, any questions in the chat or additions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself and talk a little bit as well. So at Durham Tech, we are very lucky that we have a sales tax that's collected for the city of Durham. And so they have talked to the county commissioners about that. And they have been able to obtain a certain amount of money from that sales tax every year to give to Durham Tech. And the use of that is what we've titled the Durham Tech Promise. And so we use that to help encourage students who've recently graduated to continue their education at Durham Tech. So they can get $500 each semester for 4 semesters to continue their studies. We also, for out-of-state students, have established the number of credits they enroll in does not matter because of the real difference in that out-of-state, in-state tuition, whereas the in-state students need to register for at least 6 credits in order to be eligible for that funding. Durham Tech also serves Orange County, so we also have a different Orange County promise, which is very similar as far as those scholarships grants goes for those new students. And then the Durham money is actually a little bit more extensive, so we've also used that for students that want to do continuing education programs. There are grants they can apply for, sort of like the promise for curriculum. And then we also have funded some work study positions with that funding, especially for students that don't qualify for federal work study. And so there's certain positions on campus. If anyone heard my presentation in the last conference about student ambassadors, that is one way we were able to fund some of those positions. And we've even tried to designate some of those for students that are at the out-of-state rate. We also, of course, as was just mentioned about the business sponsorship, we really try to encourage students and publicize and market on all of our materials about the specific community college exceptions, especially for students that are out of state. You probably know some of this, but I'm going to repeat it just in case. The business sponsorship is really for anyone. That is regardless of status. The only difference might be what your college requires for them to turn in. But any student should really be able to qualify for that based on the way the law is written. What the only determining factor might be what materials or documentation your college requires for them to meet that. Also, there is the refugee exception for any student you're working with that is a refugee. If for whatever reason they aren't getting in-state with RDS, that is an exception. Your college should be able to help with any student in that category. We also have the North Carolina Public High School Graduate, which unfortunately does not work for DACA students or undocumented students, but might work for pending asylees or some other categories where they entered the US legally to begin with, have fallen out of status and are now pending in another status, especially with a work permit. So again, it's such a diversity of students that we're working with, but that's an option that might be helpful for some students. We also at Durham Tech, I think we might be behind some other colleges, but a few years ago started a payment plan that has really helped some of our students that have to pay out of state to be able to spread out that payment over time. And whether they have scholarships or not, it just really helps them be able to pay whatever tuition it is they have to pay over a 3 or 4 month period. So that's been really helpful. And our foundation, we heard some about sharing stories and looking for donors. Our foundation has also really tried to encourage donors when donors are asking about the needs, talking about the needs, especially of our students that are classified as out of state. And so some of the scholarships have been, designated specifically for those types of students. We've also tried to talk to students about non-credit programs that really lead towards great, starting jobs and really lead to living wage employment. And maybe that's only a first step. Maybe they do that and then maybe their employer supports them in additional education. But we've really tried to identify what are those programs, especially when we're running into issues with students and licensure or certification. So really looking at, what is our community really looking for? What are some jobs that you can get with a short term training that may not have in-state, out-of-state requirements, and we may have grants that can help with those. So those are ways we have really worked with students. One other thing is for any of our students that where their English is not strong, we have, the basic ESL programs, which I'm sure many of you all have. We also have continuing education programs that are at a very low cost. And then we have an academic EFL program. So we talk to students about their goals, about where they are, and then try to refer them to the one that works best for them to reach their goals, but also looking at the cost of what might be the best for them. So those are some of the things that we do, but I'd love to hear from others that might do similar things or slightly different things or other things that I haven't mentioned.
I'm going to go ahead then and mention we have also partnered with nonprofit organizations that give scholarships to Latino students. Like, for example, here at South Piedmont, we partner with LAWA, that's Latin Americans Working for Achievement, and they give scholarships. At what our foundation does is whatever funding they get, if they come and to South Piedmont Community College, we match the scholarship that LAWA awards. So, and there's other community colleges that are also partnering with them, CPCC and Rowan Cabarrus.
That's wonderful, Maria. I love hearing about that. One other thought I was going to piggyback off of what Heidi and Maria was saying. At Western Piedmont, our foundation a few years ago worked with an anonymous donor to set up kind of the dream fund, because it was essentially unrestricted, and it's called a Better Day Fund. And it's essentially an emergency fund. And it's worked really, it kind of works in tandem with the Finish Line grant that I know several, if not all of our colleges have. Of course, that's the challenge with all of these funds, is that it's not a limitless well, but just in thinking more about having these conversations with donors, particularly individual donors who want to see the power of impact of their donation, what better way than to set it up in a fund that would enable students who are already progressing, that just need help to get to the end, to fund something like that, and allow it to be flexible in supporting an array of students, and then then you don't even have to go into a conversation per se of helping a certain segment of student, but like the beauty of working at a community college is that equity, and that we want to help everyone. And so this is a way to do it that would enable access and support for that out-of-state student.
Lisa, that's great, and that was actually one of the notes I took from your first answer, and that was, and maybe you can elaborate a little bit, in how would you recommend for community colleges to navigate a lot of those existing relationships, or as you try to establish new ones with local donors, as you try to shift from need-based, which would include non-resident students, and shifting their funds, their willingness to move over toward more merit-based scholarships?
I think that's a great question. And I'll be honest, I'm talking here a little bit in theory because I'm not doing that work right now. But in my past work, and actually this was a question that I asked the executive director of our community foundation, because she is doing that work all of the time, and I don't want to make it trite, but she says it goes back to the story. A lot of donors will have, I don't know a lot, but I think some, they're making a memorial gift. They have a personal reason that's motivating them to make this donation, regardless of how they're coming to the college. They're motivated because of your institution. They have a connection there, or you're working with them and you're establishing a connection in real time. And then they have a connection to why education is resonating with them. So you already have the seeds, I think, for an open conversation. And with the community foundation, I'm looking back at my notes here, regarding supporting out-of-state students, she says, we don't make that an issue, but we talk to you about what your motivation is and explain that when you have a lot of parameters around your gift, and not even just making it financial based, but for a particular subject matter or whatever those qualifying factors are. Then what happens at Western Piedmont and what happens at our local community foundation is those funds don't get used. Those scholarships get unawarded, which is exactly the opposite of what you want to have. So it might actually take a while that, they do set up a scholarship and it has all these parameters and they have to experience in real time, my money isn't getting put to use. Students aren't being served. And then maybe you go back. So this is a relationship, and it's ongoing, like any good relationship with ups and downs. But if you can be honest and say, we know you're motivated and you made this highly valuable donation, and to be able to make it really work, to be able to really help students, it's going to be best if you open it up, and you can still have qualifying factors on it. Maybe you're only going to support the second year student, but you're going to be able to serve more students. You're going to be able to see these students graduate, see these students transfer, see these students, get to that next economic level. And that's why you're meeting with us. That's why you wrote that check. So let's figure out how we can do that and hopefully open up that donor. Maybe some of them, it'll be a bit of a risk. But I think all donations are risks, right? Just like grants, they're all, we're making a calculated risk because we want this outcome to happen. And now we're just talking about maybe there's a wider way to approach it in your mind about how to have that act happen. I hope that helps.
Yeah, you definitely gave us a lot of approaches or talking points that we can use with donors. And I think, going back to what we've heard throughout the days, highlighting those student stories and the potential impact by loosening up the restrictions on those funds, I think will go a long way. Thank you. I think that's a best practice that we can all take away today. And so speaking of accessing and funding education, Maria, I was going to ask you to help us with this next question. Can you tell us a little bit about any particular strategies that your particular institution has taken on to address some of the barriers that students have, specifically non-North Carolina resident students, as they're trying to access post-secondary education?
Yes, I'll be happy to do that. And besides funding and scholarships and all that, we have also focused on offering more non-credit courses that articulate with credit courses. As you know, non-credit courses tend to be less expensive for North Carolina non-resident students. So we have made a big effort to increase the number of these courses. And not only to increase the number of courses, but also make students and staff be aware of these opportunities. So we on our website, we have on our webpage, we list all the courses that have articulated credit with credit and non-credit courses. Also this year, we started in our college catalog. When we list the credit course, we put, if there's an articulated non-credit course, we put that number and the name of that course next to the course description. Also, our curriculum maps, we indicate if there's an articulated course, we list it next to the curriculum course. So if that course exists and is less expensive to the student, we may, and they're a non-resident, we may advise them to take the non-credit course and then submit the form to get the articulated credit course and have that could be part of a certificate, a diploma, or the associate degree. You do have to be careful that you cannot have more than 75% in a given certificate or degree that they take as articulated non-credit course. So say we advertise it on our web pages. We train the success navigators. We give professional development to our academic advisors. Another advantage could be that there are some scholarships for non-credit courses that they can also take advantage of. One other thing that I forgot to mention also in Aviso, that's our advising software. You can select the non-credit course as well as the credit course if it's part of their pathway.
Thank you, Maria. I think that that's another opportunity that so many community colleges are either having conversations about or could, those CE to CU articulation agreements. I think that those are beneficial for so many students, whether it's a working adult who's apprehensive about enrolling, or as we talked about, non-resident students who there's the financial aspect of taking this route. And if you think about it and just reflect at your institutions, a lot of your curriculum faculty are often teaching these CE courses, and so there is the continuity as far as relationships with their instructors, the content that would be applicable to going from CE to CU. And so thank you for sharing that. And so the last question that we had kind of predetermined, and you all participants feel free to chime in in the chat. But Heidi, would you tell us a little bit of, I think we have a lot of valuable resources that our institutions have kind of established for students. And how do you go about getting this information into the hands, getting it to the Hispanic and Latino students at your institution?
Sure. Well, one of the big things we do, I think ever since I came to Durham Tech, is really try to get all the information, sort of very clearly and listed on all the admissions checklists, so that like funding sources are available, sponsorship, all that, the payment plan, all that information, scholarships that may even be outside of Durham Tech are on sort of every checklist. And since I work mostly with non-US citizens, I have different checklists depending on your status, so that the relevant information is really there, depending on your status. So you have all that information. So we have all of that. We've had some of it translated into Spanish. Try to assist their students in navigating that process or seeing what that information is. We do lots and lots of outreach. So anytime a school invites us, or a family night, or a nonprofit organization, or a church, or really anyone, we try to do those presentations, and even not just talk about Durham Tech, because sometimes, but just community college as an option in general, because a lot of the things we're talking about would be available on all of your campuses. But really just that, access and, what are all the possibilities for different types of students. We also, on our scholarships webpage, have built sort of a list or database of scholarships that are not contingent on your status in the United States, or do not require you to be eligible for filling out federal financial aid forms or FAFSA. So again, just trying to get that information, as many places talking about it, putting it in people's hands. I talked about in the last conference about our international ambassador program, a really Latinx ambassador program, where we have students that are presenting that information. And we also have students working on updating that information for us. And so I think, that's one way. We're also very lucky at Durham Tech that we have college advisors in most of the high schools that we serve. And a few of those are even bilingual. So I think, that's been really a great way to get information out to even more people in our local high schools. And they also, of course, are promoting our CCP and middle college program, which are so invaluable for students that are especially going to have to pay out-of-state tuition once they graduate. So those are some of the things we do. Also, I work quite a bit. I work with all non-U.S. citizens. So I'm also going to refugee resettlement agencies in the area and talking about opportunities for those students that have different types of refugee or asylee status. So those are some of the ways that we're doing. We can always do more, but I'd love to hear what other people are doing as well.
Hi, Lisa Miller again. I also, Heidi, I want to hear what others are doing too, because I know we're all approaching this at different angles, and I think I'm also thinking about what Maria has shared about working with the outside communities and those nonprofit partners, and as I've been canvassing both Western Piedmont and CVCC, I mean, I'm thinking like that's what it's taking. It's like raising a child, not to be too metaphorical, but I mean, it's going to take a village to get all that out there. And again, back to these relationships, whether it's through the church communities or the social, support nonprofit communities. I'm just thinking about how the Work and Work and Western Piedmont folks saw, okay, we did these scholarship nights. We've done 2 of them where there was English and Spanish, but it's not enough. Like, there are these powerful conversations that are coming out of it, and now we need to form another group to begin to figure out how to push through those barriers. Or the fact that CVCC recognized, like, oh, we need to create an official office within our college, so that there is an official support system, a mechanism, a literal space where these students can come. And I've been in this dual role now about a year, and before COVID hit, I got to tour the Office of Multicultural Affairs. And not only do you have the office space and these great student systems, but it has its own food pantry. So they're working with community partners and churches and businesses. It's completely self-promoted and self-sustained through the community because they found a need, and they're making these inroads. So I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more of that in this work, for not reaching out to the students who maybe already know, but the students who don't know, the potential students. In terms of recruitment. And the other thing with the Community Foundation of Burke County, they are creating videos. So, they've identified like some of Western Piedmont's Burke Collegiate Scholar students, and these are highly articulate students who, not only are going to school, but they're also working. Like, they're doing everything. They're translating for their parents. They've got like 5 different hats that they're wearing. Those are powerful stories to tell. And so now I'm thinking, I think they're on the right target with these videos, and they're doing it just in Zoom like this. So it's very, very bare bones, but the story continues. And then I'm also thinking, I was talking a little bit ago about maybe the changing landscape in grants. And our college, like many of my colleagues, has an educational talent search grant. That's a U.S. Department of Education grant. And for this last round, which it's about time to apply again, but for the last round, they wanted you to have an additional activity. And it had to be rooted in academic best practice. And so for Western Piedmont, we said, okay, we're going to reach out to our limited English proficiency students at the 8th grade level. And so that ended up being these ongoing camps during the summer, where we're talking to them about, how do you access college, which is one of the many points of educational talent search. But also, like, how do you make relationships within the community? How do you have mentoring happen? What does financial literacy look like? So I think all those are these building blocks that are happening at the middle school. And just listening to you, Heidi, I'm thinking, oh yeah, those are the stepping stones that can get you through the door. But then you have to have all those other services that you're talking about, where we as an institution are kind of armed with knowledge, and we have those checklists, and now we're ready to go. So this multi-prong approach, I think, is going to be necessary.
Other things that we have done at our college is having events with businesses that would like to hire Latino students. So for example, we have hands-on event. I'm in the technology field, so we have hands-on events like where we have students come and weld, and it's really a family event. So they get an opportunity to use machining and welding, and it's usually related to technology. And we invite businesses to talk about job opportunities in those fields. So we could invite like Lowe's or Duke Power. So we connect our careers with opportunities in the industry. And usually we speak it's in Spanish and English. So we give an opportunity to all to understand the presentations.
That's great. One other thing I do want to mention is we've talked quite a bit about need-based scholarships and how sometimes students who can't qualify through FAFSA can't fill out those forms, and so they are almost excluded from those scholarships. And it might be a conversation you want to have with your financial aid office, foundation, whoever's involved in those scholarships, to see if there's another way to establish need other than FAFSA for your students that can't fill that out or aren't able to obtain that. I know we've talked to some other schools that have done that, and maybe there are other ways to establish need other than having to fill out FAFSA and get the results.
Hi, can everybody hear me? I know you guys can't see me. My name is Dr. Estrada, and I work at Central Piedmont Community College. I'm in the Outreach and Recruitment Department. And so I've been there for about almost 8 years. And we are actually in the beginning stages of creating a Latino recruitment program. And so I'm I am building it from the bottom up. I'm part Mexicana and I'm part Black. So the good thing is I've been able to have in my corner being able to speak Spanish, being able to write Spanish, being able to build those relationships with students has definitely been in my corner. So just recently finishing my doctorate this past year, right before COVID hit, it's just always been in the works for me to really begin to focus on it. And I'm really excited about it. And actually, my research was on the experiences of one undocumented Latina in the community college system. So it was really, really cool just to see the findings. It was an ethnography because it was based off of one student. So obviously, this is life's work for me. So it's just the beginning. So they're really leaning on me to see what we're going to do. And being a recruiter, which I absolutely love, I'm able to go into high schools because we have a partnership with Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools where recruiters are able to go in whenever we want. We work closely with the career development coordinators, UNC college advisors. But this year, I've been able to particularly work with our highly populated Latino schools, which is great because I can actually zero in, not to say that I can't help a student at a majority white school or another majority Black school, but it's just really trying to put the focus on Latino students. And so one of the things I've been trying to do is connect our ESL programs, our international office to the schools to be able to present as well and to do some outreach. So that has been wonderful, as well as, again, just being able to have one recruiter specifically, but I am one person, right? So I really like what Ms. White said regarding the focus is there, the need is there. We all know this, but there needs to be an official office, an official place. And I think that's when students will be able to tie, oh, someone's here to help me. For instance, I've been doing some calls to our current students, just letting them know like, hey, it's time to register for the next, semester. And I had one student say to me, oh, so now I'm being targeted, or now I'm like, no, we're not targeting you. We're wanting to help you, you know, and I think there are some students, and I think some of you may have had the same experience. You know, I grew up where my grandparents only knew Spanish. I knew both, but at the same time, I had to do all the translating. And so it just becomes normalized. And I think a lot of those students that are able to speak Spanish and English are able to find their pathways, are able to create different, create that social capital that they need, and they somehow matriculate through, and somehow they are successful. Again, that's why my research was about the successes, because I think we hear a lot of the detrimental effects, a lot of the challenges, and there are challenges, but these students are very resilient, and we know that. So just trying to shine light on it. But I do work with some outside organizations, one organization called LAWA, Latin Americans Working for Achievement. And so that is a really another great way. So I'm trying to find different pockets rather than just recruiting students from just the high school. So it's good. I've jotted down quite a few ideas. And so, you know, I'm gonna go back to my boss and say, yeah, I need an office with a staff, and I need that type of thing. So this was really refreshing to hear. And I look forward to be of assistance in any type of way to any of you.
Ask for a building and then settle for an office.
Absolutely. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Now, that's actually very interesting, because that kind of work is potentially grant fundable, right? I mean, the facility piece and the infrastructure to support students. So you may want to put that in your, you know, file it away in your mind as well, or we can talk offline.
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much for your participation.
Will I be able to interject, sir?
Yes, please do.
How you doing? I'm Derek Mullins. I'm with Pitt Community College, and I'm heading up the Minority Male Success Initiatives. And it's ironic, I signed up for this session primarily to get some insight about how we can better serve the minority students of color on campus, especially tapping into the Hispanic and Latino, because I want to build a socially inclusive campus. And the biggest problem that I ran into was the funding. So I'm kind of refreshed to hear some of the statements from both of the young ladies that just spoke. But I'm a basketball coach as well, but I'm kind of new to the higher ed, and I'm not established in probably the realms that you guys are. So I'm trying to tap into those resources. But the problem I was having, I wasn't sure at the particular time, because I'm on my phone arriving to the school, about those individuals that spoke. And I would like to, I know the young lady just got off. She said she's in Charlotte, I think. And then the other young lady that was talking about the funding, I'm not sure which college she's with. So I wanted to see if maybe you guys could allow me the opportunity to access, some brainstorming ideas with you guys to see if I can socially integrate my campus here at Pitt as well.
Regarding talking about funding, I bet there's a lot of other experts in the room. My name is Lisa Miller, and I work at Western Piedmont Community College. So I'm happy.
Lisa Miller?
Yes, Lisa Miller.
And that's which
are you able to see the chat?
Yes.
Okay, I'll type my email in there.
Awesome, thank you. And then there was another young lady that just got off. I think she got a doctorate, I think she said. Is that right?
Yes, that's me. I'm gonna type my email.
Hello, how are you? Thanks a lot.
I'm good. How you doing? I heard you were a basketball coach.
Yes, I am.
Here in North Carolina, I don't know if you know the last name Joyner.
Yes, I do.
That's my better half. We could talk about.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Junior.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome deal. Yeah, it's a good family there. Good family.
Yeah, and I think this the basketball coach, the gentleman from Pitt, brings up a good point in that this session is just a starting point for all of us to take back to our colleges. And so I encourage not only you, sir, from Pitt, but all of us to, if you look back at the agenda, also if you have access to that, or we can put it into the chat. But I think that the more continued conversations we can have amongst each other, because obviously we're here for a collective interest. And then I think we can, like I, asked Ms. Miller about, talking points that we can use with donors and with our foundations. And so the more we can learn what's working at other places that we can take back and again, continue these conversations on our campuses, I think will only help improve the academic access, the retention, and the graduation opportunities for our Hispanic and Latino students, and for others who could benefit from these. So thank you all. We are wrapping up our time, but we'll be more than happy to type in our contact information into the chat and or access it from the agenda. And just wanted to remind everyone that we do have one more closing session here starting up in about 5 minutes. And so Susan, I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I'll turn it back over to you now.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. We appreciate your time in both presenting and the active participation from the audience. This has been one of the more collaborative sessions, and I think that's really good and serves everyone really well. So thank you for paying attention the whole time and participating. We are going to really just do a 5 to 10 minute wrap up. I'm not sure what Matt promised when he first started, but we'll figure it out. But really just more of a wrap up and next steps and talking about some of the professional development that's planned for the spring. So we'll see you in 5 or 10 minutes. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks a lot.